The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion of if a karka was nixelas and someone ended up buying it, so he bought the book and bridge, so to speak, the bailim have to give him back the money. The gazlan who sold him the land has to give him back the purchase price, but he does not pay for any shvach. And Rav Nachman said because it looks like ribbis, because there was never any purchase or sale because it was never legit. So it looks like someone gave this ganav $100,000, and now the ganav is returning $120,000. That looks like ribbis. And that's a halacha that the Gemara is challenging. So the Gemara says as follows. We were actually in the middle of a kasha. We probably have to go back to the beginning of the kasha. So we'll start from actually halfway down. Eisvei Rava l'Rav Nachman. Ein Metziah lachilas peres, u'l'shvach karkois, u'l'mazoi na'isha v'abanos minechasim m'shabbat. All of these items don't collect from the chasim m'shabbat. So just to refresh our memories, achilas peres were peres that were eaten from the land, which we'll get to the details of that shortly. Shvach HaKois is if the loikeach was mishabech, the karka. Mazon Isha V'Abanos is the amount owed by a husband to support his wife or his children. Minachasim Mishabad. They cannot collect from the kuchais mipteitikuna oila, because nobody would buy property if they're subject to a liability that's limitless. Mamela, I know he owes $100,000. When I buy a property, I know there's a risk of $100,000. But if I have to accept upon myself the liability of anything that the person I'm buying this property from owes, his wife to his children, then the liability could be limitless, and it's going to grind commerce to a halt. Therefore, we say you don't have to pay that. Someone who buys property is protected from paying that. So the Gemara makes a deal. All of these payments would be paid for if it was b'nei chayrin, meaning the person himself would have to pay. So one of the items that we're talking about is the getanim yola shvach karkois. So what would be an example of why there would be a chiyuv of a seller to pay for the shvach karkois? My lav v'lekech megazlan. Let's say speaking of our gazlan sold property, and then the rightful owner came and seized the property back, but the lekech had already been mishabech that property. So the lekech is not only losing his purchase price, but he's also losing the improvement that he made to the property. And what does it say there? It says that you don't take from the chasim mishabadim, but you take from b'nei chayrin, meaning the buyer from the gazlan can go back and demand from the gazlan payment not only for the property, but also for the shvach. So that's a direct contradiction to what the Nachman paskint. Maybe the Mishnah says in Metziah lachilas peres, from where we were medayik, that the seller has to pay back for the shvach. That's not speaking by the seller who was a gazlan. Maybe it's a seller who sold his legitimate owned property, but it's his balchayv who's coming to collect. Let's look at the ratio of this Mishnah, which would show us that the Mishnah is not speaking about a balchayv. What does it say in the Mishnah? Achilas peres. Achilas peres means if I bought a property and there are pears there, and the property was seized by whoever seized it away from me with the pears. The iba b'achayv mi isle peri. A b'achayv wouldn't be able to take pears if I have ready grown, fully grown crops on the land. When the b'achayv comes to seize that land, he cannot take the pears. V'yamar Shmuel b'achayv b'avis shvach shvachin aval pears loy. A b'achayv has no right to take pears. A nigzal will take the land with the pears. It's all my land. But a balchayv does not. So if that's the case, this Mishnah that says ein Metziah lachilas peres has to be speaking about a gazlan and a nigzal. Elapshita because of a nigzal. Umideresha because of a nigzal. If the case of ein Metziah lachilas peres is because of a nigzal, seifanami because of a nigzal. So the next case in the Mishnah, ulashvach karkois, is probably speaking about a gozel of a nigzal as well, and you have a raya against Rav Nachman that the seller has to pay back not only the purchase price, but also the value of the shvach. Dr. Marmidi area, who said, Hakadisa of Hakadisa. The first case in the Mishnah of Ein Metziah, that would be speaking by a Goslin. You're right. But the case of Shvach, from where we are Medayim, that the Goslin has to pay it back, that might be speaking about a Malvin Alev and a Bachoiv, not necessarily about a Goslin. We have a brisa that explains this Mishnah that says quite specifically that the discussion in the Mishnah is about a Goslin and a Nigzal. Why? Because the brisa says l'shvach karkois. The Mishnah said l'shvach karkois and said that the seller would have to pay back for the shvach. Kate said, what is the case? Haresha gozol sodom echavera. So this is black and white, a brisa stating pshat in the Mishnah. It's speaking about a Goslin. But let's just drill down a little bit over here. So if someone stole a property from his friend, so I guess the friend went to Bezdin and now are getting back the karka. When he collects, who collects? The Goslin doesn't collect anything because he's just giving back a field that he stole. So this brisa is very difficult to understand. What is the case? Who's being goiva? If you're going to take this brisa at face value, the Goslin doesn't get anything. The Nizal comes, takes everything back, and nobody gets any compensation for anything at all. So there must be editing done to this brisa just to make heads or tails out of it. But what we're going to be forced to say is going to Reuven stole the field from Shimon, and Reuven sold it to Levi. Levi put money into this field and improved it, and now a field that he purchased for 100,000 is worth 120,000. And you see from here that when he comes back to collect from Reuven, when he comes back to collect from the Goslin has to pay him the shvach as well. So you see, not like Reb Nachman. You see, the Goslin pays the shvach, even though it's mechsa karibus, we're not concerned. So he answered, I don't understand. We just proved to you that this brisa has some serious editing mistakes, and you have to change it around. Lav terutza komataratus. So you had to edit this brisa because it didn't make sense. So you know what? Once you're busy editing the brisa, edit it as well and say it's not a Goslin sabachayv. In other words, don't ask me a kasha from a brisa that has been proven to be unreliable. Toshma. L'Achilas Peiros Ketzat. The brisa goes on to explain what Achilas Peiros means in the Mishnah. Haresha goes also to Mechaveroi. Someone stole the field from his friend. Barehi yoyte mitachas yodoi. Kishu goyve zakar min chasam mishabadim. Upeiros goyve min chasam b'dechayrin. We have the same issue. Who's taking anything? The Goslin has to give it all up. When the Goslin loses the property and the shvach that he was mishabech the property to the owner who he stole it from, he has zero recourse. Who's he collecting from? Nobody. Elalav, the brisa must be requiring some editing, and we must add some additional details to the case. So once again, Reuven stole the field from Shimon and sold it to Levi. Vishbicha, and Levi improved it. And now the owner is coming and seizing the property away from Levi. So Levi will go to Reuven and reclaim his money. And what does it say? He can reclaim his payers. Why is that not looking like ribbis? That's not the case. It's going to gozo sodom and chaverai malaya payers. The case is where when you stole the field, it was already malaya payers. So now the Goslin has a field that he stole that was malaya payers. The achalas payers. The Goslin ate those payers, and not only that, the Goslin damaged the property. The chafar baboyros shichin and ma'arais. Now we have the payers that were destroyed, and the land itself was damaged. The Ganav didn't sell it; he kept the property. Now, Bon Nigzal Ligvois, now the Nigzal is coming to collect, and now he takes back the karka. So, Bon Nigzal Ligvois Karen Goyim and the Chosam Shabbatim, whatever is missing from the Karen, the property was worth 100,000, but now that this fellow dug in it and messed it up, the property might be only worth 80,000. So when he takes the property back, he is still out $20,000. That $20,000, the Nigzal can collect from the Nechasim Mishabodim. Meaning, if this Gazlan had other properties that he sold to others, the Nigzal can claim up to $20,000 of those other properties, because there he's collecting for the Karen of the property that was stolen from him. But Nigzal Ligvois Payos. But what if the Nigzal now wants to collect on the $20,000 worth of payers that the Gazlan stole and consumed? Those is goyim and yichasim and echayim. Those he can only collect from monies that the Gazlan has handy, but he cannot collect from the Lukux. So once again, you don't have a riot to our discussion of Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman's halacha still stands that when you buy a property from a Gazlan, and then you go back to the Gazlan to retrieve your expenses because the Nigzal came and took your property away, the cost of the actual property is what he pays, but he doesn't pay any extra shvach because it looks like ribbis. That is the first shot in how we for Emperor. That's how Rava for Emperor is this price. But Rava Bar Rav Huna has another way to understand this price. Amar, he could say, speaking, what happened was a Gazlan stole a property, and we had this mission at the end of Bava Kama. And then the gangsters from the government seized the property from the Ganav. And remember, the Mishnah makes a distinction. If they stole everyone's property, so then the Gaz is not mechiyev, because anyway, this property would have went missing. But if these Masikin only took the properties that the Ganav had, then the Ganav is going to be responsible, and that could be near the case. So now, someone steals a property, and Masikin take it away. Now, the Nigzal is coming after the Gazlan to retrieve his property. So, Bon Nigzal Ligvois Karen, now he can't take the property back because the Masikin already took it away, but he could still demand repayment of the value of the property from the Nigzal. So, Ba Nigzal Ligvois Karen, Goyim and Nechasim Shabbat. There he can collect even from properties that this Gazlan sold to a third party. But Nigzal Ligvois Payos, but if there were payers on the property when the Gazlan took it, and they lost the payers as well, then he's only Goyva Minechasim B'nechar. So now we had two different shotim of how to understand the brisa. Is it speaking in the case where there was physical damage done to the property, like Rava learned, or is it speaking in the case where the property was seized by the government, by Masikin, by thugs, and that explains why there's extra owing to the property itself. So the question is, why didn't each of these two Amoraim agree with their counterparts' suggestion? So Rava didn't like the pshat of Rabbi Bar Rapuna because it says Harei he Yosy mitachas yodi. That's the lashon of the brisa. That sounds like it's bedina mash. It sounds like it's leaving his hands in din, meaning where Bezdin is now coming and retrieving it to give it back to the Nigzal. But the way Rabbi Bar Rapuna learned it is Harei Yosy mitachas yodi is because thugs Masikin are taking it away. The connotation of the word Yosy mitachas yodi means through legal means. But Rabbi Bar Rapuna, why didn't you like Rabbi's pshat? Because it says Harehi Yosy mitachas yodai be'eno mashma. It's mashma k'moy shahoisa v'loy shechafer babaris. It's mashma that when the brisa says this property is leaving the hands of the Gazlan, it's mashma that the property is in the same condition as it was when he stole it, not that he modified it and damaged it. Because the brisa makes no mention of any damage done to the property. Rav Ashi has a third pshat in this brisa. In fact, it's Litztov Katani. A Gazan stole the soda from his cover that was Malaya pears. The Achalas pears. He ate the pears, umacher es soda, and he sold the field. So now the Lakeach is going to be out of field. Because of course Bezdin comes, takes the karka away from the lakeach. So lakeach is out, but he's not out pears, he's only out the field. Because who ate the pears? The Gazlan ate the pears. So bol lakeach ligvais karen, if lakeach wants to mend the karen, goyvim in nechasim mishabatim. He could be goyvim from nechasim mishabatim. But nigzal ligvais pears, who's coming to be goyvim the pears? The lakeach didn't lose any pears. The nigzal lost pears because when the Gazlan stole his property originally, it was full of pears. So you not only stole my property, you stole my pears too. So now the Nigzal is coming after the Ganav because he wants payment for the pears that were lost. Those is goyim in nechasim mishabat. So we have different ways of deflecting the brisa that it shouldn't be addressing our case directly that Rab Nachman was talking about. And that is someone who buys from a gazlan and is mishabech the karka, and then the property is taken away from him by its original owner. Zok Rab Nachman, although you could claim from the gazlan min nechasim mishabodim for the actual property, but you cannot collect anything at all on the interest.
Is that a luck?
I'm sorry?
He doesn't have any bnei chorin. Is that a luck?
No, he can't. According to Rab Nachman, you can't even collect bnei chorin. You're out of luck, period. Because if I improve the property, I can't even get a penny of the improvement, even from him directly, because there's a problem of ribbis. If the husband Necharin is not speaking in Rab Nachman's case, that's the point. In the last three cases, we deflected that none of these cases were speaking about where the purchaser from the gazlan improved the property. Because if the purchaser from the gazlan improved the property, he can't even collect at all on the improvement. All these other cases, you can collect on the improvement, but only from B'nai Chayrin, only if the gazlan has the money. If not, he's out of luck, or he's got to wait till the gazlan makes more money. It's not time limited. Not at this time. If he makes money later, I can come after it later. Zok Gemara, Bein LaRava, Bein LaRabba, Barafuna. Regardless if you hold like Rava or Rabbi Barafuna, in the explanation of the brisa that we just had, Milval Pehu, the retrieving from the gazlan is a milval peh, right? So in Rabbi Barafuna's cases, I want to retrieve from the gazlan the pears that he ate. I want to retrieve from the gazlan the damage that it did to my property. That only has a status of a milval peh, or according to Rabbi Barafuna, where you stole my property and was taken away from you, the gazlan owes the nigzal money, but it only has a status of milval peh. As Rashi says, Bein LaRabba, Bein LaRava, the mukmi gvias carried min gazlan. We're talking about collecting from the gazlan himself. The nigzal is directly collecting from the gazlan. Milval peh v'lo tafer mimishab. These are all milval peh. Milval peh ain't a goyim min nechasim mishabot. But the problem is, the brisa says that the actual value of the karka you can't collect from the chasim mishabodim. Why? Why is it not a milval peh? There was no star written. If someone steals money from me, there's no star written. So that's only a milval peh. So why could I ever collect from the chasim mishabodim even direct damage that was done to the property? So Gemara hachab b'mayitzkin b'sha'amad b'din v'hadar zavin. First, the Ganav stole it. Then they were amad b'din, and Bezdin already passed in this mechuyev, which now it takes on the status of a milval peh, and then the Ganav sold it. Dr. Rashi Kshamad b'din koidim shemachar nechasa before he sold. The chivin the chayvu Bezdin. Once Bezdin is mechayiv the gazlan, is like kala. Now there's a coil v'avala kamilva b'shtar. So what happened was there was a mother b'din on this field. The gazlan stole this field from Ruvain, and there was a mother b'din. After the mother b'din, that means everybody knows Ruvain's a gazlan and he has liabilities. Then the gazlan went and sold one of his own properties. So now, when the nigzal is coming to collect from the gazlan, the additional funds he can collect from the properties that the gazlan legitimately sold, because the people who bought that property knew about this liability, because there was already a coil, because there was already a mother b'din. In fact, if it's speaking by mother b'din, so that liability to pay for the parish was also publicized. So why can't the nigzal go to the lekuchos of the gazlan and retrieve property to compensate them for the parish as well? When he took the gazlan ladin, they only talked about the actual property, not about the parish, which in and of itself is very weird. To my pisk, if you stole my property with parish on it, well, why would we separate the dignitary? The Gemara Stama de Milsa, it's normal. Kitava inish karkatava beresha. The main focus that the nigzal has is to retrieve his karka. The extra stuff he didn't necessarily focus on. So it's actually possible that first they focused on the karka and passed it on it, and then maybe the gazlan sold his property, and then they continued on the next day to do the assessment of the parish, but by then it was too late. The properties were sold already, and therefore you cannot collect from those parish, from those karkois to retrieve the cost of the parish. So it becomes now, the whole chiddush is gone, because using these interesting cases, really the parish and the karka would be the same. It just so happened to be in this particular case the properties were sold before the payers were possible. Zok Gemara. So let's stop a second. Through this whole Shakla V'Taya, we were making a distinction in Shmuel, and we said that Shmuel holds that a lekeach from a gazlan does not get shvach. V'sover Shmuel lekeach ligazlan less leishvacha. Are we going to tell me that Shmuel holds that if you steal from a gazlan, you're not entitled to the shvach? Because that's how the whole sugya started. Shmuel said, "Mois ein loy shvach ein loy," and the Gemara had a shaila. What does Shmuel mean? Right? I'm sorry.
What?
If you buy from a gazlan. If you buy from a gazan, mois ein loy and shvach ein loy, and mois yesh loy shvach ein loy. And remember, we had the question: is that only if the gazan didn't write in the contract that I'll pay for shvach, or even if I wrote in the contract? And we concluded with Reb Nachman explaining the sheet of Shmuel, who said that even if it's written in the contract that I'll pay you back the shvach, so the gazan wrote in the contract of sale to his purchaser, I will pay you back the shvach as well. He still doesn't have to pay back the shvach as well because it will be ribbis. Is that what Shmuel holds like? The Amar Shmuel Reb Chidna Bashilas, he told Reb Chidna Bashilas, I guess Reb Chidna Bashilas must have been a cipher. He said, Imlach, you must ask, as Rashi says over here, Imlach, Kishat a Kosef Star, when you write a star, so you assume it's he was a cipher, Hamlech b'moicher, ask the seller for the details of his intention, what you should put in the sale contract. Im yikabel alav lahagvos deloikeach. If he's going to accept that when the lekeach comes back to collect from him, can he collect idis, karna? Can he collect the keren, what he paid for the property that he's now losing, ushvacha, as well as the improvements that he made to the property, uperi, and the payers, if it turns out down the line that someone's going to take this property away from the purchaser. So what type of star was Shmuel instructing Rav Chidna Bashilas about? Even Baal Choiv, if he was instructing him about a star for Baal Choiv, mi islay peri, a Baal Choiv who comes to collect a karka from the lekuchos can take the property itself. It cannot take the payers. So it can't be that they were talking about such a scenario because a Baal Choiv wouldn't take payers. So you would never write payers into the contract. The Amar Shmuel Baal Choiv gave us a shvach, and we were medayik shvachin avol payers loy. It must be that this contract was relevant where he bought it from a gazlan, and it's lagabe buying from a gazlan that he writes it in the star. And I'm sure it's not known in advance when you're buying it. The guy's a gazlan, but he's saying put it into every sale just in case he's a gazlan. It'll at least cover the lekeach for the payers. Rabbi Yosef. So once again, you clearly see that the gazlan is taking upon himself responsibility to pay back payers. Obviously, that means he's going to pay those payers. If Shmuel is instructing someone to include that in the star, that means Shmuel is allowing him to pay for those payers. It should be Mexicaribus. No, we have a different case over here. Amar Yosef, Haka b'mayiskinon, kagoin sheyesh loy karka. So Rashi, what does it mean kagoin sheyesh loy karka? Kagoin sheyesh loy karka legazlan zeh shemagveyu lekech karka v'lemois. You're right. If you paid me 100,000 and I'm going to give you back 100,000 plus 20,000 for the shvach, it looks like ribbis because there was never really any type of sale because the land was never mine. It looks like you let me 100 and I paid you back 120. But what if the gazlan has land that he's going to pay with? I'm not going to give you $120,000 cash. I'm going to give you a property that's worth $120,000. The hashaloi Mexican ribbis. Now it doesn't look like ribbis. I bought from your property. Now you gave me another property.
Why does it look like it? I mean, it's documented.
Because people see and misinterpret what they saw. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. People misinterpret what they see. I guess not. Okay. I guess not. Very good. Very good. Listen, you and I can both imagine someone sitting in shul and saying, "You're the best guys lose," right? It's not uncommon. Also, suddenly everything's all mutter. You're allowed to pay ribbis, yeah? If you lend me 100,000, I'm allowed to give you back $120,000 worth of property. We have a rule. I'm not allowed to lend you a saw of flour and you pay me back a saw of flour and the saw flour went up in between. That's not allowed. So what you're going to tell, and that's also Mexican ribis. It's not real, it's Mexican ribis. So you tell me that's allowed if you pay that kaka? Zok Gemara, no. Hasam Alva, there it was a legitimate Alva. It started off as Alva. I was lending you flour, you pay me back. There we're going to be more strict about Mexican ribis. We won't even allow you to pay back kaka. But Hakazvini, here the original thing was a sale. Lamaisa wasn't a legitimate sale. It wasn't a loan. So it's further away from Alva. They don't see the need to make such a gzeir of Mexican ribis if it's just a transfer of land. At the time of the sale, there was a kinyan made. Zokrashi, what does that mean? There was a special kinyan made that the Ganav was mechayiv himself to pay shvach. What does that change? The Havale mechuyev mishas hamecher koidim sheyesh schar hamtanas mois. Since his chayv starts right now at the sale now he's being mechayiv himself right now to pay that. Once it's like a shtar kno. He's being mechayiv himself now already, regardless. Once he's being mechayiv himself, it can't have anything to do with ribbis, because the definition of ribbis is I'm paying you for the time that you lent me money. But if I already am mechayiv myself even before you lend me the money, that can't possibly be ribbis. Frank the Gemara. So how about apply that to saw b'saw? Are you going to say there it would be allowed? Of course not. There it's also prohibited because it's Mexican ribis. If it's a real halva, we're going to be much stricter on these types of things and say they also are Mexican ribis. But when we're dealing with something that's not halva anyway, it's only a sale and it's only a chomer yisera that it's Mexican ribis. There, if it's kanam yadai, or if I'm paying back land, there's a possibility, a reasonable argument to make that it's not Mexican ribis. Okay, gewaltig. Gufa, Omar Shmuel, Ba'choiv goyves hashvach. Ba'choiv gets to demand shvach. So what does it mean? Reuben buys a property from Shimon, and Shimon was a Ba'choiv, and Shimon's malva comes and seizes the property away from Reuven. Now, Reuven might have purchased the property for 100,000, but Reuven might have improved it for another 50. So now the Ba'choiv is taking $150,000 away from the purchaser, even though the purchaser only bought a property worth 100,000. But that's halacha. A Ba'choiv can take shvach. Amar Rava, Teda, it's mistaber to say that he's going with a shvach, and as Rashi says, "V'lei motzi loikeach lemeimar anash ba'ashbechi." Loikeach and say, "Listen, this is mine. I was mishabech the property. That's not what you have any lien on. You have a lien on the base property, and therefore you can't take it away." But he cannot say that. How do I know that's a Rava? Shekach kosav v'lei moicher loikeach, because this is actually the nusach of the shtar that's written from the moicher to the loikeach. So it's very clear. And this is what the moicher says. I'm going to come and make everything good. I'm going to quiet things down. The atki, I'll clean up. The amrik is a lotion of washing out. Zavini Elin, this purchase. Elin, not only the purchase of the property itself, but any hard work you did on it. Ushvacheya. As Rashi says, V'chivin al moicher hadar gavi. V'chivin al moicher hadar kama. Since the lakeach clearly has recourse to go back to the moicher, because it's written black and white into the shtar of the sale, therefore, Gavi Shvacha Ba'choiv Milakeach. For that same reason, the Ba'choiv can actually take the Shvach from the Lakeach, and then the Chozur HaLakeach HaLamoicher. And then the Lakeach will go back to the person who sold it to him and demand full payment. And you see in the shtar that he's able to demand that payment. So if you see that the Nusach shtar was that the Lakeach could demand that payment, it must be that the Ba'choiv would have been able to take it away from him. The Eikim Kadamach, and I'll stand it up in front of you. In other words, I'll make right the sale. Vitzavi Zavina Danan. What's the definition of Vitzavi? I will Vitzavi Zavina Danan. I will make this sale good.
Purchaser has agreed.
So Vitzavi Zavina?
I guess means agreed. So Vitzavi Zavina Danan. This purchaser has agreed to the condition.
Okay. No, that's the Kabbalah. I guess Vitzavi is another Kabbalah.
No, they can become up. Tzavi Zavina Danan. The bina means purchase, and I guess
Purchaser has agreed.
A person agreed and accepted these conditions. Okay, so you see clearly in fact, that the Ba'choiv can come and take away Shvach. Beautiful. That proves the point. Amar Reb Chia bar Avin l'Rava. So Reb Chia bar Avin had a question to Rav. When you give a gift, you don't write all of this achrayis into a star matana. Rashi says, "She'in adam makabel all of achrayis mashu noisin." If I'm giving you a gift, I'm not taking achrayis for all this. Be happy with what you're getting. So, are you telling me hachanamid leitarv shvacha? So you're going to tell me because of that the ba'choiv cannot seize the shvach from a property that I gave away? As Rashi says, hachanami dim noisin nechasav matana loy gavi ba'choiv shvacha. Since the loikeach can't go back to the person who gave it to him and say, "Hey, pay me for the shvach," Amalei, he answered surprisingly, "Einachanami." Rabbi said that's exactly the way it is. When you give something away, it's even better than if you sold it. Because if I sell you a property and you pay for it good hard-earned money, and then you're meshabechet, you're not protected. The ba'chav takes it away. But if I give you a gift and you put effort into it, and you're mashbiach the karka, it's protected from the mocher. Amalayin, you're exactly right. Yafe v'yafe. Dr. Rashi, yafe v'yafe b'davazeh. In fact, you're right. Matana is the way is more secure than the purchase. The chivin loyhader gavilei, since the loikeach has no recourse, or in this case the mekabel matana has no recourse, loy mifestinin loy b'midi. We will not allow him to lose. Why should he come out at the bottom? Why should he lose? The bishlam gufish al karka, the malva can take away, because amalei amai ma'ain gavi. Where am I supposed to collect my loan from zok the malva if I don't take the karka away? Avol shvacha, but if you want to take the shvach as well, amalei, they're the mekabel matana can say ma'av shadicha. What did I cause you any loss? I didn't cause you malva any loss, so why should you take it away from me? But if I'm going to be able to collect back from the loikeach, then the malva will say, I'm taking it because you're protected, you're not losing. You can go back to the moicher and retrieve your expenses. Amar Rab Nachman, ha masnisa misayeyelei lemar Shmuel. This brisa is a raya to Mar Shmuel that the ba'choiv is goy v'shvach. V'huna chavrin mukin lev'amili achrin. But Ahuna and his chaver actually said you don't have a raya from the brisa that we're about to quote that the ba'choiv is goy v'shvach, because they interpreted the brisa was referring to a case where this shaila is not relevant. So let's look at the brisa that we're officially going to try to extract from, that the ba'choiv is goy from the shvach. The Tanya, someone sold a field to his friend. So the pashtus is that the ba'choiv is coming and taking the property away from the purchaser. So Zok Gemara, Kishu Goive, as Rashi says, Kishu Goive, Kishu Lekeach, Chayzer v'Goive min hamoich. When Lekeach is now going back to collect from the moicher because he purchased a property that was now seized, Goive is a keren min achasim mishubadim. He can collect the keren from the chasim mishubadim, meaning this Lekeach can go seize a property that the moicher sold at a later date than when he bought his property. And he collects from the nechasim b'nei chayrin. So this is quite clear that a lekeach whose property was seized by a malva has recourse to go back to the seller and demand payment of the shvach. But huna chavrin said you don't have a right, because huna chavrin mukala b'mili achrini lekeach mekasel. Huna chavrin will learn this price is not discussing a purchaser whose property was taken away from a ba'choiv. It's talking about a purchaser whose property is taken away by the rightful owner. The rightful owner surely has a right to take everything. We learned he even could take pairs. Tanya Idach, we have another brisa. Someone sold a field and the purchaser was mashpiach the property. Uba ba'choiv v'tarfa, and the ba'choiv came and took it away. So Kishu Goiv, when he collects. So now we have a scenario where the Lekeach, let's say, put $50,000 of investment into the property, and it netted $100,000 benefit. So Kishu Goiv is a shvach, Yosy al yitzia, noitel is a shvach mi balakar. So there's $100,000 of increased value here, but there was a $50,000 investment made to get the $100,000 shvach. So the Bala Karka gives him only 50,000. That's the shvach yeser al yitzia. But the yitzia itself, his expenses, he can actually demand on the bachoy. And the logic is very simple. It should be no worse than yorid l'sech sadach haver shalom yidaitai. The bachoy is coming and taking my property away. If I did work in the bachoy's property and he didn't ask me to do it, I could demand him to pay me the lesser of the two. The lesser of the two, whether it's the shvach or the yitzia. In most cases, the lesser of the two will be the yitzia, because if you invested 50, you would expect it would go up by more than 50. Sometimes your investment doesn't pay off, but at the end of the day, the Ba'chayv pays the lesser of the two. So since out of the $100,000 of improvement, you can force the Ba'chayv to pay you 50 of it, so you're only out 50 of shvach, that you'll go back to the Lokeach and collect from. So let's see this again. Kisha goiva is a shvach im a shvach yoshol yitzia noitless a shvach from balakarka by yitzivi balchoid the my yitzia say al shvach. But if the expense was greater than the shvach, ein lo ela hoitza shir shvach. And who does he get from? He gets it from the balchoid, and then he has nothing to collect from the seller from. So let's analyze this price. How is Shmuel going to explain this price? If it's a case where you stole it, where you purchased it from a gazlan, so this bachoiv is not really a bachoiv, he's a nigzal, and that's what we're talking about. Kosher Resha. It's going to be shver the Resha. Why is it Rashi? The katani noitl is a shvach in balakarka, right? We said that he can get the shvach from the balakarka, meaning it went up by 100,000. So the nigzal is going to pay him 50 because of his yitzia. But then he could still go back to the seller, the gazlan, and demand the full payment of the shvach, which would be an extra $50,000. But according to Shmuel, he can't do that because it's Mexican ribbis. Dama Shmuel lekech megazlan less shvacha because it's Mexican ribbis. So this brisa could not be consistent with Shmuel. And even bachoiv, if you want to say the whole brisa is speaking about a bachoiv, then it's even worse. It's kosher reisha v'seif. Why? Zok Rashi. Kosher reisha v'seiva. The katani b'achayv noisin asayitzia. We said that the b'achayv would pay my expenses. Shmuel b'achayv goy v'ashvach ve'nashin klum. According to Shmuel, the b'achayv has a right to take the full improvement of the property and pay nothing, and it's the loiva who has to pay everything. The Amar Shmuel b'achayv goy v'ashvach, and therefore there would be no reason for the b'achayv to pay even yitzia. So we have a problem. According to Shmuel, how will this brisa make sense? So Gemara eBay saying we have options. Either you can do it for lekech begazlan, and then the problem is if it's lekech begazlan, how can it be going for the shvach from the gazlan ait mexicaribis? The terraces could go into yesh like karka. Remember, we had svaros earlier when there's an exception to the rule of Shmuel. Either he's paying back in karka, inami b'shekana miyada. So we had different ways of getting around the problem of mexicaribis. Or you could say ibay sema b'bachoiv, or speaking by bachoiv. Then you had a question. The bachoiv should not have to pay shvach at all. He should be able to keep everything. But like Asha, not all shvach were created equal. Some shvach a bachoiv can take, like Shmuel said, but some shvach he cannot take. So kan b'shvach hamagia l'ksafim, the kan b'shvach she'ein hamagia l'ksafim. There's a big machlokes Rashi and Tosfos and Bava Kama what this means, but we will stick to Rashi. What is shvach hamagia l'ksafim? Karov likatzer. It's just about ready to be cut, but it's not quite ready. It still needs a little bit more growth, still needs a little bit more connection to the land. We treat that like perish kamurin, and those ein bal choiv goy v'oisa below yitzia. So if they're not fully grown yet, less than 99% fully grown, there the bal choiv can take that shvach that's part of the karka. We'll consider it part of the karka. But the shvach that this brayso is talking about, where we're forcing the b'achayv to pay the yitzia, is speaking where the produce on the field is just about ready to be cut. That shvach he doesn't get. Now, exactly how you draw that demarcation point would be a little bit difficult, but that's Allah. Frank Gemara, how can you say that? V'maisim b'chol yoim. There are stories every day that Shmuel himself paskins the kamag b'Shmuel afilu b'shvach hamagil l'ksofim. Shmuel allowed a balchoiv to seize even shvach hamagil l'ksofim, and you just said that there's a distinction. Zok Gemara, you know why? You know why? Lekasha ha the masik be kishir ara ushvacha ha the loy masik be ella kishir ara. What happens? Yes, let's say the land in the shvach is 200,000, and that's how much the loan is for. If the land and the loan, if the loan is for the full amount, that you would need both the land and the shvach to pay for it. Yes, that's where he can pay for it. That's where he can take even the shvach. But what if he's only owed 100,000 and the base property is worth 100,000? The shvach is more. That he's not entitled. So Zaktibar Lakasha, Hod the Masik Bay, Kishir Ara Ushwacha, Hod the Loy Masik Bay Ella Kishir Ara. So let's see Rashi. This is the Shiloh, whether or not the Malva can come and take away from Lekeach, such Shilohs come to Shmuel, and you know what he paskins? Umagvi lebachoiv kol hashvach im hakarka. He allows him to take everything. Va'afilu magia l'ksofim. Now, didn't we say by magia l'ksofim the Lekeach is protected? The Malva can't take it away. Yet Shmuel lets him take it away. Kol shman tzrichim hakarka. As long as they're still somewhat connected. So yes, that's true. Hadagatani noitel yitzia mi balchoiv. That you say that the purchaser can make the balchoiv at least pay him his expenses. That's the loymasik be balchoiv and moichish your Arab shvach. So really, he has a right to seize it. But the problem is, I don't owe you that much money. You're owed 100,000. My property is worth 100,000. The shvach is worth 50. You have the right to that 50. That's where you cannot take it. That's where the Brisa says that the Malva would have to pay off the Lekeach, the value of the shvach, because he's not entitled to that. Because the land of the shvach is worth more than what he's owed. The Malva has to pay the Lekeach shvache, the money that he's not entitled to, which is over and above the amount of his chayv, and then he can pay him off, and then he can take the whole land with the shvach. But I did not get the Masei b'loshen yitzia. How come we use the loshen yitzia? In other words, why are we talking about yitzia? It's not relevant to yitzia. It's all about how much I'm owed, right? The question is, I could take all of the land connected to the value that I'm owed. So why are you expressing it in such a way that it makes it sound like there's another issue involved? Yitzia, it's all about what are you owed. It's lashmini to tell you the extra chiddush. Lashmini hugufa also the hechad yitzia yisrael shvach. If the yitzia is greater than the shvach, ein lo el yitzia shir shvach. He doesn't get this full yitzia. He only gets the amount that it was improved. Okay. Zok the Gemara hadal masik bay el kishir ira, and therefore the yoyv le shvachi u'masalach. Now, in order for the Malva to take the whole field, he has to pay off the Lekeach any amount that the field is worth more than the value of his loan that he's collecting on. Zok Gemara, Hanicha Lamandamar, this whole thing makes perfect sense. And when we say this whole thing, we mean this whole thing that the Malva gets to take the whole land and just refund in cash the value that it's worth more than his loan. That works out very good if you hold what happens if the Bachoiv is owed $100,000? I have this property that I bought from the Loiva for $100,000, and now the Bachoiv is coming to me. Can I say, listen, I don't want to give you back the land. I'll write you out a check for $100,000. I have the cash. I'll pay you off, and then I'll go back to the seller and I'll ask for my money back. But I don't want you to take the land. So if you hold, I don't have that option to do that, and the Malva has a right to demand the land itself, then everything makes sense over here. He grabs the land, he pays me what it's worth extra, and everything is good. And if you hold that in any case, whenever I have cash, I have a right to say, don't take the whole property. Let's say you were owed 100,000 and I have 50,000 in cash. I'll say, I'll give you 50,000 and only take half of the property. But if I could do that, well, over here I have 50,000 because the shvach is my 50,000. So I let the purchaser say, if I would have had cash here, I would have paid you your full loan and I would have kept the entire property. But now I don't have all the money. How should the Leslie Susie? I don't have money, but I have cash value in the improvement that you got to pay me for anyway. So Havli Garber the Ira, Shir Shvachui. Instead of giving me $50,000 in cash and taking everything, how about you give me $50,000 worth of this property? Why can't I demand to keep some of that property? Zok Gemara, in fact, he could, but Hacham b'Maya Skinon, the Loiva originally designated this property as the property for which the Malva would pay. So there's a much stronger shibud on this property, and therefore the Malva is entitled to the whole property. And even if normally we hold that a purchaser can pay off the Malva, in this case he can't, because in the Poitiki is a much stronger shibud. The Amrlei lo yehelach biroin elamizu. Okay, now we have another question. What if when you go buy a property from this guy who's selling it, you know it's stolen goods, you know it's fishy, you know it's shady, but you buy it anyway? So hikaba she'ena shaloi. Zok to Gemara. Hikaba she'ena shaloi. As Rashi says, loikeach bekarkazu she'ena shaloi shel moicher. Shekzulai says you bought it knowing that there's going to be a problem with it. Amarav, Rav says still moisi yeshloi. He still gets to collect from the moicher the money that he paid. As Rashi says, but shvach ain't like. There he is, he's not entitled to any shvach. Ushmul Amar, afilu mois ain't like. Shmuel, you never get shvach. But you can't even collect the purchase price. You should have known better. You should have known better because you suspected that this was stolen property. So basically you wasted your money. But my committee, what is the machlokes? Rav holds, Adam Yodeya Shakarka ain't like. I know that he doesn't have karka. I know he doesn't have karka. And therefore, why am I doing this deal? I know I'm buying stolen property. I'm giving you the money because I want you to watch it for me. Very trustworthy guy to watch your money for you, especially a guy who stole property, right? So then why is he making believe like he's buying your property? Why didn't he just say, I want to give you this money as a pagod? So Gemara, Savar loy mekabel. Loy mekabel. I'm afraid the guy won't accept the shmira. Now he'll be mechuyev anointed. This is like the story with the fellow who went away on vacation and he wanted to get free parking for his Rolls Royce. Everyone knows the famous story. So he goes to the bank before he leaves on his vacation and he asks for a loan. And they asked him, what is your collateral? He said, my Rolls Royce. So they said, okay, bring it in. He brings it in, gives him the keys, he gets 100,000. When he comes back from the vacation, he goes and he gives back 100,000, he gets his car back. So the manager says, what was this all about? If he needed the money, he said, I didn't need the money, but you know what parking costs in Manhattan for a week? Here, I got free parking. So, what's that? Yeah. Zok Gemara. So that's why I didn't say this because he thought he wouldn't take it. Zok Gemara, Ushmul Savar, Adam Yidei Shekarka Eloi. I know he doesn't have this property. I know he's a thief. So why am I paying him for it? The Gomar V'Noshel Shematana. I want to help a guy out. If he's stealing property, maybe he needs money. So I want to find a way to give him money as a gift. Why did you just tell him I'm going to give you a gift? Because it will be too embarrassing for this Ganiv to accept the gift. And therefore, he won't accept it. So he had to do it with a ruse as if he was buying a piece of property from him. Okay, we'll stop here. We're losing ground. We lost a half Amud. So now we're not even a full blood ahead. So I'll have to push on Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. So we'll stop here and we'll be tomorrow.